Well, we've been analysing the fine print of Budget 2026 after Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman tabled the budget in Parliament and presented her speech, her 9th consecutive budget on record. Joining us now to help understand the direction that the budget has chosen to take in, the medium and long-term impacts, but also what it could do in the short term is the Expenditure Secretary and the Chief Economic Advisor. Gentlemen, appreciate you joining us here on the programme. Chief Economic Advisor, to start with, congratulations. It's not very often that we see a convergence between the economic survey and the budget, but you've got it right for the third time, so a hat-trick. Congratulations on that. And I'll start with the growth estimates. 10% nominal is what the budget is saying, and you had pretty much pegged growth at between 6.8 to 7.2% as well.
Yeah, in real terms, around 7, if you could say that, and that gives you a deflator of 2.8%, which is a big improvement over this year in terms of what the deflator is likely to be. So the base effect will be there. So we are comfortable with these numbers that the budget has assumed. And if anything, I would probably say it's a tad on the conservative side. A
tad on the conservative side. But, you know, we are going to see two big changes coming in, both as far as the CPI is concerned and the GDP print later this month. What will that do to the nominal number?
I think I tried speculating on it, but I think I gave up. I would rather than wait for the actual numbers to play out.
But do you think that it's likely to result in any significant, meaningful change?
I probably don't think so, because the CPI, probably the weight of food will go down naturally.
Yes, to about 36%, which is what must be said.
But I think in the larger scheme of things, we're talking about probably not more than 10 to 20 basis points on the CPI side. On the GDP side, last time when we had the revision, I think it was the GDP stock went down by about 2% or so, if I'm not mistaken, in 2011, in 2014 when we did the 2011-12 base year change. So and I believe we have been tracking the GDP fairly well, especially the annual numbers do take into account the informal sector also very well. So I don't see very big changes happening. So it can happen only if a country is really moving from a very primitive system to a very advanced system, then you will capture more. But I think we have been doing a pretty good job, so I don't expect to see a major shift.
There was some concern even on the borrowing number, but even there, do you believe that you may perhaps not have to go as far as that?
Yes, because ultimately it depends on the ability of the economy and depending on how global factors play out to be able to absorb all this spending as well. So I think in general, given the conservative revenue assumptions also in terms of buoyancy ratios and so on, I think we are on a good wicket.
On a good wicket. Expenditure Secretary, let me understand from you, the pulls and pressures as far as this particular budget was concerned. One, you have to anticipate the volatile global mix that you're dealing with, and at the same time deal with the many priorities and challenges domestically as well. What were the rationales behind some of the decisions in terms of allocation, where you may have compressed, where you may have enhanced?
You know, what has come out clearly in the budget, which reveals our #1 priority was the Capex. There was clarity right from the beginning that Capex, to the level that the sector is able to absorb, should be given a priority, and it has come out accordingly. And we have found also on discussions and in analyzing that the various infrastructure ministries and their agencies and the implementing agencies have been able to utilize it, whether it's the highway construction which is happening, or even the railways, or even the metro, where we now have a network of about 1,000 kilometers in the country, the third largest in the world. So the infrastructure sector has been able to absorb, and the merits of infrastructure investment is well known, so that has been very much a priority. And beyond that, since the states also need to get their act together on infrastructure, so the scheme where we support the states on their capital investment, that has also been a priority, and with that we have formulated the budget.
Two questions as a follow-up to yours. And we've been, of course, talking to industry. The expectation, of course, was that Capex will continue to be the heavy lifting will be done by the government. 4.4% of GDP, that's the number, the highest in this decade. But the expectation was it should even be higher. In fact, Vinay Chatterjee putting down a number of 14 lakh crore rupees on my program, saying that should be the number that India deserves. But you believe that the absorptive capacity, I mean, you could have put 14 lakh crore rupees, but it may eventually it would have come back to about this number. This is a realistic number to your mind.
Yes, and to be realistic in any number that we put into our budget is equally important, and that is important also because the quality of the infrastructure is important.
Right.
The quality of the roads that we construct, the other infrastructure, the buildings that we make. So this is a realistic number that we have put, 12.2.
So would it be fair then to assume that this is the peak really as far as the kind of Capex spending that the government can do, and it's unlikely that we're going to go into double-digit kind of growth rates from here on? It's likely to be in the sort of, low single-digit numbers from here on in the foreseeable future?
I wouldn't say that because first of all, even when we talk of this number which we put in our budget for Capex, some of the sectors are already fairly well developed on the PPP side. So there is some private financing coming into that, some blending which is happening. And for instance, in railways, we now expect that sooner or later they will also start getting into some kind of private public partnership on the station development and various other initiatives. Lots of land that they have.
That's been the plan for years now,
but now things have. So like the highways is a reality today. The railways is something that is ahead of us. Yes, we are yet to see, but we are confident it will happen. So my point is how much of infrastructure investment that India needs as a country is one, and how much of government financing will it require out of that is the second point. And government is committed to build up the infrastructure, and besides this kind of infrastructure, the shipbuilding infrastructure, the various other infrastructure are also in our horizon. So I would not definitely not say that this year's provisions are the highest that will happen, but it will be really based on an assessment of the requirements.
If we were to look at some of the expenditure heads, and there is a number for the new NREGS, and there is also a 30,000 crore rupee number for the NREGS. If you could explain that to us. Yeah,
the National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme. So since a need was felt to bring in more efficiency into that scheme, so the new scheme had been brought in, and both the earlier one and the new one are acts of parliament. So the employment is guaranteed by an act of parliament, and in fact in the new one, while people talk the short name, if you look at the full name, it really gives the thought process that is behind it. So Viksit Bharat is right in front. It's not some kind of a meandering kind of employment scheme. It's a Viksit Bharat right in front. It guarantees Rojgar, the employment, and also it guarantees Ajivika, the livelihood, which is equally important. We would not like our citizens to be always depending on some wage employment, but livelihood happens, and it's on a mission mode. And it's focused the G Gramin, the rural areas. So it's a very well designed initiative now. The number of days of employment guarantee is more.
Right.
And we have provided exactly the amount which was estimated when the bill was being drafted. The Parliament was considering the bill, and the Act has come into force. 95,000 crores, exact full amount has been provided. And the ongoing or the earlier scheme, which also had some committed liabilities,
so
there were some
30,000 crores is on
for that purpose. Otherwise, that one is really a winding down stage, and it was just the inefficiencies in the fund flow and the implementation, and we expect it to be winded down now.
Before I get to the CA, one quick question. There seems to be a cut as far as your fertilizer allocation is concerned, urea specifically. Can you explain that to us?
Let me put it this way, ensuring that the required quantity of fertilizers, especially urea, is available is non-negotiable. And this current financial year, it has gone up a bit because the requirements, the quantity required came up a bit, and when it goes beyond the domestic production capacity, then the rest has to be imported, which is at a slightly higher cost. So from that point of view, the next year's budget may look a bit low, but whatever be the requirement, in fact, it's a whole of government kind of assurance that the required fertilizer will be provided. But having said that, whether there are efficiencies which can be brought in, for example, the agri stack which is now maturing, and the point of sale and the IFMIS system which the fertilizer department has, all of these are now at the stage where they can be integrated and bring in much and also the soil health cards, much accuracy in the utilization of fertilizer with very good outputs and benefits to the farmers. So it's something very exciting ahead of us, but in all that, required fertilizer to be made available for farmers is a commitment.
You know, see, one thing that your economic survey spoke about but didn't get carried forward in the budget was the import duty rationalizations, and that was the big expectation that everybody had, that we would in fact go down from the 8 tariff lines to perhaps 3 or 4 at this point in time. But do you believe that that hasn't happened because of the ongoing FTA negotiations? Many are still works in progress, and so it's best left at that level?
No, that's a reasonable guess on your part, and also, but I think the FM did hint at some rationalization in the future in one of our early paragraphs in Part B. But there have been many basic customs duties in many areas that have been exempted. So the spirit of it, if it is not called by that name, the spirit of it is definitely manifest throughout the budget.
You know, on your pivot to strategic indispensability, and there were mentions of semiconductor, there was of course data centers, there was nuclear power, biopharma. You know, on balance, these now seem to be the sectors that the government wants to prioritize as sectors of the future.
Absolutely. If you look at, you also, there's one more you should mention, that construction infrastructure equipment.
Yes.
And especially the FM mentioned during a speech, tunnel boring equipment, etc., which were delayed. The shipments were delayed to India, etc. So there is a certain alignment between what we wrote in the survey on moving to strategic resilience and identifying the key areas to move in first. And that is what this budget reflects. Okay,
now that the budget is out of the way, and we could perhaps have a more sort of honest conversation about the rupee. Now, you know, you said in the survey it's punching below its weight, but at the same time you also said that it's good at this point in time because it helps offset some of the tariff impact. Was there a discussion? Was there a that you needed to do something in the short term, in the near term, as a fix to be able to at least calibrate the fall of the rupee and the decline of the rupee? And was the decision then, because the measures that the government has announced are medium to long-term measures,
correct,
was the decision then that, look, let it find its own level?
No, that conversation might have happened between the minister and the RBI, etc. I'm not familiar with it. Yeah.
Okay, but do you believe that the measures announced in the budget will address the swift fall question?
No, I think it's difficult to say, because ultimately it is about a certainty in capital flows, and capital flow certainty in today's environment is a bit difficult to achieve because the world is very uncertain and geopolitics is casting its shadow in general. So ultimately, as we discussed earlier, for India it's a capital importing country, and therefore to the extent that the capital imports are sensitive to geopolitical developments, the pressure will be there. The one big development that can obviously take away this concern is the potential resolution of the tariff situation with the United States. That will then be a very good, significant sentiment turnaround indicator.
What has been factored in as far as the currency is concerned, as you put?
On the budget math per se, I think the currency is in a way helpful from the point of view of providing for a higher growth, because of the fact that the export sector will be better off compared to what we were. Especially, it is taking away a lot of the pressure coming from the higher tariff. But to what extent it is reflected one-to-one in specific budget numbers, that's a bit difficult to point out.
I have already asked the CA this, but let me ask you the key risk that you believe that we're now faced with, and the budget numbers could be faced with as well, potentially, as we look ahead.
The external uncertainties are definitely something which exist, and there are reasons to believe that those uncertainties may continue. But, we are on a very stable macroeconomic situation. Fiscal prudence, which has been a priority of the government for quite some time, is putting us at a very happy position on that. And the prioritization of our expenditures, the very ambitious. You mentioned about the semiconductor mission. Yeah. In fact, the one which got announced today is a follow-up on the first one, which itself was very ambitious.
Yes.
76,000 crore rupees and all are huge amounts which we have invested, and very rightly so. And where not just central government but the state governments in different parts of the country have also seen the merit and also contributed. You know, so. And the rare earth, again, which you mentioned, the one which was announced today is not the first one. Already we have a processing kind of scheme which has just been approved.
And then again, a further enhancement as far as the electronic component scheme was concerned to 40,000 crores.
So all this should put us in a good position. And while the rupee is something which has linkages to different things, making our exports more competitive is again something which has been an ongoing exercise. The export promotion mission has been approved. And in fact, today's budget, those announcements about the custom integrated system should be really on the ground kind of useful thing. Then for the imports, the integration of those 7 or so regulatory agencies, the food safety, animal safety and all, enabling a more streamlined clearance of those items moving in and out. So I think all in all, we are well geared to tackle whatever is ahead of us and promote the exports moving forward.
Let me go back to the very first point that you made as far as looking at Capex in the context of what the centre is also doing with states in the SASKI scheme. You know, how has that worked on the ground? How satisfied are you with how that's shaped up?
You know, we are quite satisfied because the SASKI combines both flexibility but also with reforms sort of points. So on one side, what infrastructure projects to take up are really left to the state government, so that flexibility is with them. So state A may take up some infrastructure projects, state B takes up something else. It's left to them, depending on their assessment of the local requirements. At the same time, for instance, we are pushing through the SASKI scheme reforms on the urban land reforms, mining reforms, the road safety, the scrapping of vehicle reforms, electronic enforcement of road safety reforms, you know, so with measurable targets, which are then verified by the central line ministry. So it combines on one side flexibility to the states, giving them the authority to pick up the projects they want, at the same time ensuring that required reforms are being taken up by the state governments, because many of the things are regulations at the state level. So it has worked well, and it has, in fact, while providing funding for Capex from the central government, we also monitor that they increase Capex expenditure from their own budget. So it has worked well. States are happy. We are happy.
States are happy. You're happy. And gentlemen, with that, we will let you go for today. But we look forward to seeing you on our budget verdict tomorrow as the conversations continue. But a well-deserved evening of rest for the two of you. Thank you so much for joining us here on CNBC-TV18. The conversations will continue. We're not done. We will bring you more highlights, more newsmakers right here at the CNBC-TV18 CII Budget Headquarters. We're back in a moment with more.